Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking with yet another update on Fry Somerdale. So welcome to this third update on Fry Somerdale, and as you can see there's been quite a transformation since the previous update. I've been really cracking on with the landscaping and adding features such as the road and of course one of the most iconic features of this whole scene. So without further ado, let's get right into the update. So one of the biggest changes is the addition of the road. Now this has been created by using offcuts of a cereal box which have been cut to shape to fit the contours of the crossing and the car park, and then this has been painted with green scenes textured paint, and then I've gone over that once it is dried with weathering powders. Now I opted for the concrete colour. This is purely because it's quite a pale grey, which is very similar to very pale tarmac, and then of course with the use of Humbrol weathering powders such as the earth brown and of course the smoke grey, it really does build up this lovely textured tarmac effect. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I've gone around the edge of the crossing with more darker tones to give the effect of oil and dirt from the locomotives, and all in all I'm really pleased with it. For the centre of the crossing, I basically infilled in between the two check rails which you saw in the previous update with a bit of card just to raise the height, and then basically I filled it in with the rest of the textured paint. It's quite thick, so it's almost in a way a bit like a filler, so you can level it off really nicely and get it flush with the rail heads. I've done the same with the pavements as well, and as you can see I've blended the tips of those in with those little ramps that blend into the crossing quite nicely. Of course, one of the key things to get right while doing the road was to blend it in with that picture on the back scene. And as you can see, especially towards the back, I was very careful with the powders to match the tones and textures that could be seen on the picture of the lane on the back scene. And hopefully you'll be able to see from this angle, I think I managed to pull that effect off quite well. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, and it's probably one of the best optical illusions I've managed to achieve with an image so far, so I'm really chuffed to bits with how this sort of section has turned out. So while I had the weathering powders to hand, I also went over the track work. And as mentioned in the previous update, I'd already done a bit of weathering, which basically involved painting the rails and of course the sleepers. But with the powders I decided to go over once more, mainly focusing on the ballast and the surrounding area, and as you can see it really has sort of lifted the track work and brought it sort of really to life, giving it that general grime that you would see around sort of a track bed area. So this gives the effect of obviously soot and dirt that comes off the locomotives, but also the general grime that gets built up in these areas over time, so I'm really pleased with this effect. So one of the other major changes to the layout since the previous update is the addition of more of the landforms. So in update 1 I had already put most of the landforms in position, made from polystyrene sheeting, and that is of course to build up the contours for the road and the sort of the raised area where the woodlands to on the opposite side of the track, as well as the car park. But one major landform I had left out is of course the iconic cutting going into the Somerdale site. So I waited until I sort of test fitted the walls before I sort of cut these to shape to build up the contours that would of course hold the walls in that curved position. So again, it's just a number of polystyrene sheets all cut to size and built up and then quite vigorously sanded down. And then once those were in position, I then went over with my sort of signature PVA wood-filler mix, which builds up many of the mud effects on my World War I layouts. And this basically acts as sort of a ground cover, so if any of the foliage comes off, it gives the effect of mud underneath. And also as well, it sort of smooths everything down, so you don't get sort of the jagged edges that are sort of left over that you always tend to get, even if you sand down polystyrene quite well. So it's all smoothed down, and it gives the effect of sort of a bit of a rocky outcrop in a way, because it was quite a steep cutting. And the sort of the mud effect sort of adds to that. Moving on round, you can see I've also done the opposite side where the woodland's going to be too. Of course, this is a bit of a wasteland, so there probably will be a bit of mud showing through here. And then, of course, I've done the edges of the car park as well, including both sides. So I've sort of narrowed it down a bit, so it means I can get the billboards in, which you can just see here. So I've also started to test fit some of the details to the layout, including the concrete lamppost that you can see in the background of some of the images. This is from Rail Room Electronics, and it's one of the operating lamps in his range, and it really is quite a nice little feature. It's not quite the correct one for the scene, but it's the closest I could find, and it really does fit in there quite nicely. Of course, it's still got to be wired in yet, but once that's done, hopefully we'll have a working lamp. We also have a telegraph pole. This is from the Ratio range. This has been painted up, and I plan to do a bit of weathering on this one to give it sort of a real sort of neglected effect, as it does seem a bit dilapidated in the pictures. But I've trimmed off some of the actual posts at the top there, where the cables would have gone. I've only left a row of 2. The original model has 4, but looking at the pictures there was only 2, and I've positioned it roughly where I think it's going. It's hard to tell whether the cables are going along the road or actually up the cutting itself, so maybe it might be some sort of telecommunications to the signal box or something. I honestly don't know, but I've popped it in position, and of course this will be weathered up, and then once it's fully done it will then be glued into position there as well. We also have the first of the gates, and these are again from Ratio. These are the GWR fencing, wooden fencing, and as you can see they fit that area quite well. I was a bit worried about the gates, particularly the main one, which we'll come on to in a moment, but these ones fit in there quite nicely. Of course these will be glued into an open position, but for now I've got them in the closed position just to make sure I've got the spacing right. And then moving on round to the car park, we of course have got the 2 billboards, and these will help hide the entrance to the fiddle yard. Now these are again from the Pico range. These are part of the Wheels kit range, and I've done a bit of modification with these. As they come out of the box they are green plastic, but I've added a sort of a creamy white trim around the outside of them, as looking at the pictures the outer trim was painted white. You get 2 billboards in the pack, and there are 2 billboards actually on the car park area of the site. However, one of them is half the size of the other one, so basically what I've done is I cut one of the models in half and glued it back together to sort of create this little kit bashed billboard, and it really has turned out quite well. I've still got to weather them up and of course add the posters, and ironically one of the posters, as I previously mentioned in the previous update when I showed the kit, does actually have a Cadbury's poster, which of course will be glued on there when complete. So this of course brings us on to one of the most iconic features of the whole layout, and that is the entrance to the Fry's Somerdale site itself. And as you can see there's been plenty of progress on the walls and of course creating the start of the iconic gateway. So first of all I basically trimmed the Metcalf brick paper to size. I basically based it on photographs, so I carefully studied the images which I had and basically gave it that stepped effect, which you can see from a number of different angles. It was hard to see at certain angles because in some pictures locomotives were in the way, especially the furthest wall section, but there were a number of good angles looking face on, and from that I managed to gather the rough height and the of each sort of step and level that was in the brick wall there, and I'm really pleased with how that has turned out. Of course it will all be blended in with foliage around the top. Looking at the pictures there was quite a lot of you know, sort of foliage overgrowing over the top, so that will all be sort of hanging down around the top area of that as well once complete. Then we have the gateway itself. Now the gateway consists of 2 stone pillars and some sort of wrought iron gate. Now the gate was probably one of the most worrying parts of this whole project, as I wanted to find a gate that sort of was similar or extremely close to the gates used, and when I did a bit of studying through a number of different gates from a number of different manufacturers, I found that the Ratio Great Western spear fencing was pretty much a close match, and they do a pack which just has gates and sort of platform ends in it, and sure enough there was in that pack some gates that are quite large, you know, so almost double the width of the little wooden ones that you saw previously on the opposite side of the track, which basically corresponds to the gates that were actually on the Fry's site. So I'm really pleased with how they have turned out, and as you can see again, like the wooden fences, they've been put into a test position, closed at the moment, but of course they will be open when they are finally put into their final position. The pillars themselves, they've just been created from a bit of leftover polystyrene. The one on the right hand side is slightly higher than the one on the left as per the prototype, and these will be painted up with a sort of a sandstone paint and then weathered up, and hopefully I'll try and put some of the little detailing that was sort of carved into these as well. And then they have a few little sort of flagstones on top which will of course be shaped to create that of the prototype. So let me know what you think. I'm really pleased with how this sort of little scene has sort of come together, and of course I'm going to focus now, hopefully in the next update, in sort of bringing this scene to life. So once again, I guess that's all for this update, and I hope you enjoyed the progress on Fry's Somerdale. Now that the gateway is starting to take shape, it really is all starting to come together, but of course there's plenty of progress to be getting on with, mainly adding the scenics and of course the details that will hopefully bring this layout to life. So until the next time, stay safe, and this has been SDJRSNF88 speaking, and thanks for watching.